Welcome, fellow wizards, to the Indie Game Lunch Hour. Today we're having a community-focused episode where we discuss a specific topic with everybody here in the space. Today we're talking about the age-old enemy, imposter syndrome, and getting over the fear of failure.
The Indie Game Lunch Hour.
In our live magical podcast, we give game developers the chance to hear stories of breaking in from industry experts, as well as directly ask them questions about their areas of expertise in the second half of each episode. This is a live, mostly unedited event that we have in our Discord every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. So we would love to have you come by and join us for the next one. There are links to do so down below. I'm your host, as always, Willem Delventhal, the headmaster here at the Indie Game Academy and the self-proclaimed Wizard of Joy. And joining me today is my entire community, our entire community. Hello, everybody. Some of you may have heard these episodes before. These are our community episodes, where instead of having one particular guest, we interview many members of the community. So I'm going to have Hamna jump up on stage with me to begin with. Hamna is our head of House Ranger, and also one of our very first students. Hamna actually joined us in our very first cohort. How you doing today, Hamna? Have a mic. I'm not hearing you if you're talking.
Hi.
Ah, hello. How are you today, Hamna?
I'm good. How are you? How's it going?
I'm all right. Did you know you were going to get interviewed today?
No, but
Well,
works.
nice. Thank you for getting up and talking. So, Hamna, we decided that the topic for today was going to be fear of failure and or imposter syndrome. Is that something that you have experienced before, Hamna?
Yeah, a lot. I would say a lot. I feel like as an artist, before I came into the game dev community as an artist, I've had it for years. Like it's crippling to the point where I've not put my artwork out or not gone out to game dev meetups or like design meetups or artwork meetups. It's very rampant. I think I only know a total of two people in my entire life who don't have imposter syndrome. Every artist, every creative that I've come across has had it to some level or degree at this point. It is very common, unfortunately, because creative souls suffer from it now and then.
Yeah, it's really interesting working in a creative field because I don't know. I've never worked in like banking or something that's less creative. But I just imagine that when it's a little bit more straightforward, there's a little bit less self-doubt. I almost guarantee those people still have the self-doubt, but when you can quantify success or failure, it makes it much easier, to get over that fear of failure. When it's more about just like, is this good? I don't know, question mark. That's definitely, at least personally, when I struggle.
That
You've
is
already
true. It's a tough place to be in.
Yeah.
You've
You've
already
already
what?
mentioned you've already mentioned something interesting here, which is that you have met two people who don't have imposter syndrome. So tell me how you know those two people don't have imposter syndrome.
Well, they're pretty old and they got over it after years of work. So
I see. All right. So the only escape is time, is what you're telling me right now.
it's time and a lot of effort and the willingness to put in the effort because you have to realize that you're not the only one who's going through it. And there's a whole bunch of people out there who are perhaps as awkward as you on talking about it, or they're actually too nervous to bring it up and be like, okay, I don't feel like my work is good enough, you know?
Yeah.
So essentially, you do have to put in active work in it, but those two people are, I would say, at least 20 years older than me, but they did bring it up to the fact that they did not also do it alone by themselves. Because the whole thing about imposter syndrome that I noticed in game devs a lot too is that your emotions come in when you're working. You can't possibly separate them, no matter how much we want to compartmentalize it, right? At the end of the day, we're humans. We are emotionally driven to a certain point. You just have to learn how to, as literally Rick is saying, you have to learn how to reframe the narrative. And then you have to make sure you talk to other people about it. And then you realize when you hear yourself, the amount of progress you have made, no matter how tiny it is, no matter how big it is, when you hear yourself and you affirm yourself, I think something in the brain changes. There's some kind of magic happens where no matter how bad it is, it starts making progress.
Mhm. I love that. Yeah. Well, that's already some wonderful words of wisdom. I'm kind of curious, actually. We maybe should have done this at the beginning. What do you define imposter syndrome as? What does that actually mean? And when we had this question, let me also let everybody know if you have any questions or talking points, please put them in the chat. With a community focused episode, we won't have the regular split where the questions are saved to the end. So if you have any discussion points for us as you go, just put them in the chat and we'll use that as a talking point. But we didn't actually define imposter syndrome. And when we had our community member ask, I believe it was John, about imposter syndrome, they used the term fear of failure, which I would argue are two very similar things, though perhaps not exactly the same. So why don't we define it for a second? What does imposter syndrome mean, and what is fear of failure?
I feel like it all interconnects. For me, my imposter syndrome comes from my work not being good enough, or my work not being subpar, or comparatively to peers my age, or in the industry I'm in, or at the level of working, studying, whatever I'm in. Um, Comparatively, it's like I'm not good enough, or my work is not good enough to be out there, or to be presented, or to be talked about. And then I feel like fear of failure stems from it, and it's like a scary loop of hell that you just get stuck in.
Yeah. Yeah, I it's interesting that you say that there are these two people and that they are older who have escaped the imposter syndrome. I think I can only think of one person in my entire life who's like that, and it's actually my mom. My dad is older than my mom, and I'd say he absolutely still succumbs to the imposter syndrome. Somehow my mom escaped it. I don't know how. She's my idol, I guess. So I think time is definitely a factor in getting over it, but that's a really difficult answer to give to somebody who I think is suffering from it. Because it's like, well, in 20 years you'll be fine. Well, that's a it's a long time. So I'm curious, Hamnet, do you have any personal coping mechanisms? If you are, let's say there's a situation, maybe you're doing a showcase or something like that of your game or your project or your art piece. How do you handle imposter syndrome when it crops up?
I have a few coping mechanisms. The first one on top, which I feel like strengthened my relationship with IG in the first place, is being part of a community. I know people bring it up all the time. I'm aware it's overused, but I cannot emphasize enough on the fact that if you are around a community that's supportive to you, and you are equally as supportive to them, and vice like it's like a good relationship. I feel like it helps a lot because if you can relate to another person feeling the same feelings as you, humans automatically feel validated. When you feel validated, that fear kind of is like, okay, if that person whose work is so great or terrible, whatever, is also going through it, maybe the fear is, workable. It is doable. It is fixable. So one of my coping strategies is being part of a community. Second is being vocal about my fears because most of the time I have anxiety, so it's all in my head. As soon as I'm vocal about it and people look at me like, "Didn't you get an award in that?" I'm like, "Huh, maybe." So the award should be validating, but it's not enough for me. But they're like, "Okay, but just take baby steps." So community. Second is being, talking about it to people, which can be nerve wracking in the first place. And the third one, which is the most important one for me, and it's really just made me survive through a lot of things, is accountability, but with kindness. I'm not one of those people you can challenge. I will not take a challenge. I will walk away. I will tell you to keep your challenge to yourself. I'll be like, good for you, buddy. I lost. I feel like accountability with kindness has really just pushed me to really healthy boundaries with myself, my imposter syndrome, where it's like, okay, I'm not alone. Someone's there to listen to me. I'm validated. And also, if I mess up, I can still go back to this person and I can still try again. And my work is still going to have some kind of worthiness to it. And that's because I'm trying, not because I'm great at it, but because I'm trying. So that trifecta is my holy trinity. And
I
that's
love
the
that.
only thing that gets me through to the point where, Willem, you've seen me since day one. I did terribly in your classes. Terribly. God knows. I do terribly in lectures. I have no like auditory memory. I only have visual memory. The only reason I've spent 3 years so far and I'm learning to be a producer right now or like trying to produce stuff is because you never gave up on kindness with me. You and this community has helped me with kindness. I have failed so many times, God knows. Destroyed projects, destroyed team, like terrible stuff that I've been through where it's like, oh God, I can't do this. But every time I failed, I fell. I knew someone with kindness or a community with kindness was there for me to get back up, and I would not be judged for having terrible work.
Love
So
that. What a
that's what got me
beautiful,
through.
yeah, what a beautiful introduction. So the three then are community, talking it out, and accountability with kindness. Is that right? Awesome.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah, John is saying accountability with kindness. They love that. I agree. Really beautiful sentiment. I'm glad. One of the reasons we still work together, Hamna, is because you are one of the people who gave me confidence in this school and the way that we approach things. Oh, absolutely. The day you were like, "Oh my God, Willem!" Like I felt like I totally failed your class, and yet you like gave me some time, and I managed to recover. And um, it took me a while to, talking about imposter syndrome. I am so proud of this school and where it's at now. And I think somebody just newly coming into this space would think of this probably still as a relatively young school, but as like a well established school. But remember that that was definitely not always the case. This was an experiment largely after I taught much more traditional engineering boot camps, which Hamna was a part of for another organization. And the only reason that this school got started is because that first cohort of students, some of whom, by the way, disappeared and never came back again because they didn't like the classes, but enough people like Hamna, like Dave that we bring up now and then, really got something special out of this and were willing to tell me that. And that, I think, that goes back to your community aspect. It is really easy when you spend too much time alone to get locked in your own head, feeling like, oh my God, all these people on social media or whatever are doing so amazing. And like, this dude released this game when he was 2.5 years old and made $10 million. Like, all of that is really easy to do because we see the outliers because they get more attention, without realizing that like those outliers are truly one in a million. And I'm not saying that to uplift them. I'm saying that to think about the statistical odds of those people. Like, it just doesn't happen to all of us, and that's okay. And it doesn't say anything about your own talent, doesn't say anything about your ability. You could be literally more talented than that 2.5-year-old, and they just happened to get lucky, or people like that a 2.5-year-old made a game, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's okay. I think I've got like a plucky, like dorky version of this because that's who I am. I dream of being Gandalf, as everybody knows. I have a favorite quote. That is from something. I don't know. It's one of those meta quotes that gets thrown around in all kinds of media, which is just that. Courage is not a lack of fear. Courage is acting despite the fear. Like a really important prime difference. It is everybody feels fear. I guarantee it. There are people who seem to be able to, eliminate that fear, and there are probably people who feel a lot less fear than the average person. But for the most part, those people who are truly courageous are the ones who are scared shitless, are shaking in their boots, but they act anyway. And I think a big part of getting over the imposter syndrome is recognizing it. A metaphor that has always worked really well for me is think of that imposter syndrome as one of your advisors at the table, but they're not sitting at the head of the table. That's where you sit. So say, thank you for the advice. I recognize what you're saying. You're like, hey, I don't know if this is good enough. I hear you. Thank you. We'll try to do better next time. Let's get some advice from other members of our community. Let's figure out how to do better. But ultimately, you can shut up right now. It's okay. I'm going to go do it anyway. That's true courage.
Basically.
Yeah, and that's true progress, I think. It is really, in my mind, the only answer to imposter syndrome, because otherwise you shut yourself in a closet and never try anything. I've just called Rick up on stage. So Hamna, thank you for being up here. I'm going to keep you on stage so that you can comment as you want. We're going to focus on Rick for a bit, but please feel welcome to jump back in for anything. Rick, welcome to the stage. How you doing here, buddy?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'm so happy to have you up here. Rick, many of you have heard from and heard his story in the past, but just to give you the short version, one of the reasons that I think Rick is actually a great speaker for this particular topic is that Rick went and made it happen. Rick not only got himself certified as a Unity developer, not only started a contracting business where he has self sustained himself with contract work for like 5 years now, Rick? Is that right?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. Still awesome. I'm not trying to diminish that at all. And then also just recently released his first game as a solo indie developer, or rather a self-made indie developer. So Rick is the kind of person who went, I want to do this, and then went and did it. So Rick, I'm curious, how does imposter syndrome play or show up in your life?
So I want to start off with like what my definition of imposter syndrome is. And
Mhm.
in some ways, it's feeling like you're presenting yourself as something that you don't feel like you qualify as. But even more than presenting yourself, it's identifying yourself with like, I am a game developer. I am capable of doing this or that. And I heard a wonderful quote once where it's not about that people aren't asking you, have you done it? It's can you do it? Right. So if you're presented with a new challenge, something that you've never done before, it's having the grit to just go at it and say, I'm going to give this a shot. And I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out, understanding that you can do it. The key to you have to go out of your comfort zone in order to expand it.
Mhm. I love
So
that. Yeah.
yeah. So like, if you just constantly put yourself in new situations, when like the first time I ever went to an IGDA meeting and got myself in front of people who were living the life that I wanted to be, where I could actually meet my role models, I had to get over that hump of should I be going to an IGDA meeting? Like, I'm not a game developer yet, but then I just said, well, screw it, I'm going to go anyway. I put myself in that situation where I've taken a Unity tutorial. I've done a couple of fun projects on my own. Do I belong sitting in a group of AAA developers? It doesn't matter. I went anyway.
I love
So,
that.
but you put yourself in these uncomfortable situations, and the only result is growth. And that's one of the things that I really want to reiterate, the community aspect of it, like Hamna was talking about. When you are around other people, you get to witness patterns in how people grow, and is very frequently the ones who are always putting themselves in uncomfortable situations, doing things that they've never done before, they're the ones who grow the most. And there's an element of imposter syndrome because you don't know if you can do this, but you just go ahead and say, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do it anyway. And whether or not you will succeed or not is secondary to whether you grow in attempting.
I love that, Rick. What a wonderful piece of advice. I think there's like I've heard this from a number of different places. Um, the concept of thinking about your own growth as a video game, I think, is really powerful. So think back to your favorite video games or just your favorite sources of media, your favorite movies, your favorite books, your favorite stories, and think of when those people became truly epic. They didn't become truly epic because they like hid away and just played video games all day, which sometimes totally fine. And I'm not really judging you. I think Hamna's accountability with kindness is important. If you want a life where you aren't growing as much, I think that's okay and should be okay. But if you want growth, Harry Potter didn't grow because he hid away from Voldemort. Harry Potter went and fought Voldemort, and made it happen. Frickin' Frodo and Sam climbed Mount Doom. Sam had to carry Frodo up the mountain to get there, which maybe is a comment about community. Either way, these people are fictional, yes, but we can still learn something from them. They grew because they put themselves through adversity, because they went and did the things that made them uncomfortable. And you'll see that echoed in real life as well, on a regular basis. Some of those people that you respect in your own life, I want you to think of one of them right now. Think of one person that you respect in your life. I'll think of my older brother. He's an incredible human. He is extremely calm and level headed. He is amazing at just like staying chill in any situation and being able to talk it out. The reason that he's capable of doing that is because he has been an engineering manager or a leader since basically the minute he got into the game industry, and has been climbing his way up. He now is an engineering manager over at Meta, working on Horizon. And then not only that, but he was also in a 10-year long relationship, a 10-year long marriage that was wrong for him, and was extremely difficult for him and our family. And then eventually that had to end, and he got over it and now is in a wonderful relationship. But all of that adversity that he put himself through, I don't think he like chose to get in a wrong marriage or anything. helped him grow into somebody who's so calm and level-headed and who I truly respect now. Those people that you respect in your life, I almost guarantee are the ones who are seeking and intentionally trying to find uncomfortable situations that they have not experienced before, because that helps you grow, just like a video game. What do you think, Rick? Do you agree with all that?
Oh, but 100%. Those are great examples that have nothing to do with game development. This is human growth, period.
Yeah.
You know the direction that you want to grow in, and you step towards it, and you don't second guess yourself and psych yourself out with thoughts of I don't belong here. This isn't the path for me, because you choose your path and you say I'm going to do this because this is my only next step.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not that internal feeling that makes you belong. It's being there. So, like, even if you go there and you're like, oh, God, I don't know if I belong. Whew, this is hard. You still belong. You're there. And I think, like, I think imposter syndrome. Why don't we actually talk about this? I'm curious what you have to say about this, Rick. And Hamna, if you have thoughts, let us know. Most of our feelings, especially those ones that we all experience, like our anger, like our, sadness, like our joy, those are things that evolved for a very particular reason. Anger, for instance, there's this like super fascinating study about squirrels trying to open boxes, these puzzle boxes that these scientists gave them. And what they discovered is that anger is essentially a problem-solving technique. At some point after the squirrels try to open these puzzle boxes a couple different ways, they get angry and they like shake the box, and sometimes that works and opens the box. So that's maybe a part of the question of why we ever evolved to anger. So imposter syndrome, something that we all experience, why did that evolve? How does it serve us in our day-to-day lives?
I'm a mighty hunter, but can I take that tiger?
Not bad.
It makes you stop and really consider, like should I be doing this? Like, should I? Maybe it's better to not try.
Yeah, and in that situation, in that specific example, that might just save your life. There's another like fun concept that I'm going to throw in here. You've made me think of it with the tiger example. We actually have a pretty healthy number of neurons literally in our guts. We have, if I'm remembering right, I might be wrong about this. We have about a third of a cat brain worth of neurons in our intestines. And the main thing that they're doing is controlling our digestion. Digestion is like more complicated than you might think. But that is potentially part of the reason that we have actual feelings in our guts. So I like to say, this is totally me stretching, but I like to say that means that those feelings in your guts are like much more primal than the feelings we get up here in our brains, where there's a hell of a lot more neurons. It's a third of a cat trying to process things. So those feelings are pretty good at the primal stuff. They're pretty good at going, maybe let's not jump off this bridge, because that's like real far down to that water there. But they're a lot less good at processing much more complicated situations, the kinds of situations that we put ourselves in now. So when we get up on stage, yes, scary, dangerous, and so your guts are going to feel that fear, but your more intelligent, evolved brain that knows that this is just a stage, I'm not going to get eaten by a tiger, is able to process through it. I would love for somebody to fact check me on that. I'm pretty sure that's right. Yeah, 500 million neurons in your gut. Have fun sleeping tonight, says Carlos. Thank you, Carlos. Amazing. So yeah, I think... also... Yeah, please tell me.
I just wanted to say, I also think that there is an element, like in the way that you psychologically process, like how you're going to approach a situation, what you tell yourself you are is going to affect the attitude that you take to something. Like I could tell myself I'm studying to become a game developer, or I am a game developer. And those two differences in thinking might affect how hard you are driven to actually solve this problem. Because it's one thing, oh, I'm studying and I've gotten out, I'm still learning. If I can't solve this, that's fine. But if you are a game developer, like it is part of your identity. It is what you choose to do to like, I am going to solve this because this is who I am, and this is what makes it up. So that can tweak your approach to things just by changing the way you view yourself.
Yeah, I love that. And the way that you talk about yourself, it sounds like there's an old adage that is your body follows the words. So when you say something along the lines, it's a fixed versus growth mindset thing. If you say I'm bad at math, what you are saying is I will just never be good at math. That's what you're telling your body. If you say yeah, I need to study math more. That's a very different approach. That's saying, well, I may not be good at math right now, but one day I might be if I put in the time. And those effects, the way that you think about yourself, actually wind up having a pretty significant effect on your literal physical body. So I love your example. If you say, I'm studying to be a game designer, what you are telling yourself is, I am not yet a game designer. I'm not there yet. But if you say instead, I am a game designer or a game developer, you're telling yourself that I'm already here, I've already made it, and I'm just becoming a better one. I think that is a phenomenal difference in the way that we think about ourselves and is a big part of how you may solve imposter syndrome. Um, and I think part of it is just like working on believing it. In Jesse Schell's book, The Art of Game Design, which is a phenomenal book for anybody trying to sort of get started and wrap their head around how game designers think. In one of his first chapters, he talks about how you become a game developer. But that's one of the questions he gets asked the most often. We use this in class, so anybody who's been through our class know this one. How do you become a game developer, Hamna?
You literally get up and say, I am a game developer. And you say
Yeah.
it at least 2 or 3 times, but once is enough. For me, 5 times.
You just say it a couple of times because there's really there's no actual difference between somebody who is and somebody who isn't. If you've never touched game development in your life, then yeah, maybe go open up Unity and start to get experienced. But even then, you are a game developer. The definition of a game developer is somebody who develops games. It doesn't need to be any grander of a definition than that.
Do you guys remember the first time you ever referred to yourself as a game developer out loud
It's a really
in
good
front
question.
of other people? What does that story look like?
Cringy. So cringy. Oh my God. It was like, me? Me? No, that is a lie. Oh my God. Uncomfortable. Hide me somewhere. I need to hide. Eek.
Do you have an actual story, Hamna? Because I don't know if I remember mine exactly.
Mine was in one of your classes, Willem, where you were like, we're all gonna say I'm a game dev. And I'm like, fudge cakes, this is not happening. I cannot say this out loud. I turned off my video and I was just sitting there like curled up like a child. I was like, I can't, it's a lie. I'm not. I'm like, we're all lying. But that's it. It was a major freak out moment. But then it came recently where I started saying, I am a game producer. And then as soon as I said that, my brain went default to like such a lie. Oh my God. I don't have professional. Oh my God. It was immediate go hide somewhere feeling. And everyone was staring at me like, but you have 2 games. That's still progress. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't have a AAA title. I can't. And they're like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, relax.
That's so funny. All right, I'm gonna do something right now. Rick and Hamna, please keep yourselves unmuted, and everybody in the audience or anybody who's listening to this after the fact, I'm gonna make you do it with me. If you're listening, I will know psychically. I'm a wizard, yo. If you don't do this, everybody, right now, I want you to say out loud, just one time, I am a game developer.
Oh, dear
Please
Lord.
proceed.
I
And
am
Hamna,
a game developer.
yes, thank
I
you, Rick.
am a game developer and producer.
And listener, thank you. Awesome. If you didn't do it, I will know. And I'll tell you that you are a game developer. Yeah, I think I love that you did it in my class. I wasn't sure if that was gonna be it. Yeah, it is so true that, your words really do wind up being the what your body follows, what your physiology follows, how you feel. If you wind up, it's just what Rick was saying. If you walk into a room and you say I shouldn't be here, then you'll feel like you shouldn't be there. If you walk into the room and despite the fear, you have the courage and you say I belong here, that is such a palpable difference. So many of us know those people who just feel ultra courageous in our lives. I just got the chance. All of you think back to friends you had from years ago and reach out to them because I just had the chance to talk with an old high school friend of mine that I think I haven't talked to in literally 10 years. And it was such a joy because this dude was somebody who I didn't get closer to because of how much he intimidated me. He was always a sweet guy. He was definitely a friend of mine, but it was like this ultra courageous, untouchable, oh my God, look at this man. And then I talked to him again, and it's just the same thing. We're just kind of shooting the shit. We're having fun. I was courageous enough this time to tell him that he kind of intimidated me, and he just laughed. He's like, dude, I was terrified too. I don't know what you're talking about. So reach out to those people and ask them, what they were feeling, because I guarantee they feel the same way. Also, all of your game developers. Just make some games,
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to invite our last guest onto the stage. Carlos, hello. How you doing, Carlos?
Hey, how's it going, Willem, Hanma, and Rick? Very nice to, join the panel here.
Heck yeah. It's wonderful to
Uh,
have you. So, yeah, go ahead.
no, please, I was going to talk a little bit about it, the imposter syndrome. I wanted to touch a couple things that Hanma and Rick said and, what you added to kind of being an imposter myself or feeling like an imposter myself, trying to break into the industry. uh Hanma kind of said hearing yourself out loud is, kind of what triggered her to really think, or believe that she was part of that, developer community. Whenever I'm talking to, friends, my wife, they're asking, oh, how goes the process of kind of getting into the industry, any interviews, applications, I kind of talk them, through some of that process, and they ask me some questions, and I only really started to kind of believe in myself after I was able to answer some of their questions. As someone who is not actually within the industry, but is able to talk on a level, at least some of the corporate jargon, I would say, with people who don't speak that language. What does that mean, or can you explain this? And I kind of go off on a little tangent on maybe how game engines work, or the art pipeline. That kind of puts me in the position to think, okay, maybe I am meant for this community. It is giving me that kind of courage to continue that search on my side. So someone kind of still dealing with that imposter syndrome is, kind of making that slow progress based off these small comments is really, I'd say, keep continually sparking my passion.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I bring up Tony Robbins now and then, who is at this point in time somebody who I have a little bit harder time endorsing. But one way or another, he's given me some wisdom in the past that I care for. He's a life coach, and one of the things that he talked about is you have to re-up whatever it is that keeps you going. So you can't like go to one motivational conference and expect that to keep you motivated or confident in yourself for the rest of your life. You have to go to things like that, maybe GDC, whatever it is that makes you feel confident again. You have to keep taking that like it's medication. So you have to keep exposing yourself. You have to keep giving yourself opportunities to build the confidence. It will never last forever.
Right. And one thing to add, more kind of speaking on the community aspect, obviously, as someone, just entering, I'd say the market, learning the tools is a little intimidating, right? Am I asking the right questions? And Willem, I don't know if you know just by looking at my name, but you actually tagged me in a post a couple weeks back about the, AAA versus indie. And the moment that I got that notification that, hey, the Wizard of Gaming has tagged you in a post, I was like, okay, maybe I am right, asking the right questions here.
Yeah, what's funny, Carlos, I gotta thank you for that post because I think you asked, yeah, it was just a regular post that I just happened to see on LinkedIn. And I was like, oh yeah, like people don't quite understand the difference between these two things. And so I made that first version of the chart and tagged you in it. That was one of my more popular posts I've ever written. I didn't
Oh,
realize
really?
that there was, yeah, I didn't realize that there was this much sort of curiosity or confusion about the difference between an indie studio and a AAA studio. And later I wound up amending it to include AA studios too, which is actually pretty fascinating. And it's something that's like on my mind now because there is no strict definition. There is no strict cutoff for what is an indie versus a AA versus a AAA. And so I have tried to define, for the sake of our Indie Game Academy, what is the cutoff for what is an indie versus something else. So thank you, Carlos.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Researching online, you can find, 100 different answers to that question, all of them kind of in the broad sense. So kind of having that kind of Venn diagram to, actually see the major differences. Yeah, you can pick and choose, certain attributes from one or the other and say, hey, if it's, in this description, but until you actually have everything laid out in front of you, it can seem pretty ambiguous.
Yeah. So I want to touch on something that you said here that I think Hamna also kind of echoed, and see if you agree with me, Carlos. For me, when I feel imposter syndrome, one of my most tried and true techniques to get over it is to put in some kind of work to answer the fear. So if I'm feeling like I am, let's think of an example. If I'm feeling like I'm not a good enough level designer, I might go do a practice level, or I might listen to a podcast on level design, or I might go watch a video on level design. I will go and seek new knowledge to combat the insecurity, which I think, by the way, is part of the reason we ever evolved imposter syndrome. Um, I want to mention Hamna's statement, which is accountability with kindness, because it has been somewhat toxic of a behavior of mine when I do that too hard. When the answer is always more work, I'm insecure, so I better do more. So I think you have to have a balance of, okay, I'm going to answer this with actual work, and I'm going to understand that this is just a voice that I don't need to listen to.
So, Willem, absolutely agree. I want to say I kind of lean towards your toxic trait. I would say is right. Got to have to do more, do more. I'm looking to get into production, just as kind of a little background here. Um, in my mind, that means you have to know everything. I'm going on all the PM tools. I'm trying to learn the engine. I'm trying to learn art. Hey, if I ever have to work with artists, I better make sure I know that kind of pipeline that is involved in that detail. I see the hands on the head there.
Hamna's laughing her ass off because I'm sure she's going through exactly this right now. She's also trying to work as a producer.
So like you feel like you got to know everything, but in reality is if you could pick up little things here and there, Jira, take that as an example, widely used, right? I went ahead and I just made my own dashboard. I made, apply to jobs as one of my tasks, and I put an epic of, this week, right? Just little things. I don't need to know everything in depth, but as long as I get a little bit of information on what I'm actually learning and not, doom scrolling as they say,
Yeah.
um, then I feel kind of positive, about my situation.
Yeah, there was I think actually it was one of our podcast episodes. This podcast, by the way, thank you listener for listening, and thank you guests for being here and the community for being here. This podcast has been one of the greatest things I've ever done for myself because it gives me the opportunity, and I'm happy that it's valuable to many other people, but it gives me the opportunity to talk to smart people and to get the perspectives and to ask the questions that I am the most insecure or just curious about. And there was a podcast episode, and I don't remember the guest. So if anybody remembers who this was, please let us know. There was a podcast episode in which our guest was talking about listening to podcasts, reading books, any kind of learning, any kind of self-directed learning, and how we were talking about being insecure with not picking up enough from those learnings. I don't know if anybody has experienced that where you like take a class and you're like, oh, I gotta make sure I learned a bunch from this class, or you're reading a book and you're like, oh, I gotta make sure I learn enough. Like I used to, for instance, when I read books, I would underline everything, I would star things, I would write notes afterwards, and it was so much extra stress. And the simple tool that that guest gave me that I still employ today is just as long as I walk away with one key lesson from this source of learning, then that is a success. And it doesn't need to be anything else besides that. So I can read an entire book, and as long as I walk away with just one lesson from that book, then we're good. Everything's good. It doesn't need to be any more than that. That I think comes back to the accountability with kindness that Hamna is talking about, where you are making sure that you are learning, but it doesn't need to be more than just one thing. And it will naturally be more than one thing. But as far as the expectation of yourself, a way to keep yourself accountable without going crazy, as long as you learn one thing, everything's good. Rick, yeah, I was assuming you had something to say because you unmuted yourself. So tell us what you got.
Yeah, so it's definitely the case of, when you say that you want to be a producer, as soon as you have a clear vision on how you would act on being a producer, put yourself in a position where you will be a producer. This could be being a prefect on an IGA level 3. It could be doing a game jam and just telling everybody, "Hey, I'm going to coordinate the team." And you're only an imposter if you tell people you're going to do it and then you don't even try.
Ooh.
So as long as you make the effort, you are going to learn lessons. You will figure out what works. You'll figure out what didn't. You won't repeat the things that didn't work, but then you'll be equipped with a good idea of what will work. And in the process of doing it, you'll make sure you remain humble and be open to the feedback of the people that you're working with, because a lot of times you will be acting in a capacity that the people around you have insights for you that will say, "Hey, listen, have you thought about doing it this way?" And you never would have gotten that insight offered to you if you would never put yourself in the position to fill that role. Like, one of the things I love the most about the classes that I teach here is the students very often come to me with a solution that's better than what I was teaching the class. And I am super excited about that because I have grown. Even though my goal was to teach the class, I was able to grow a bit because people came in with specialized knowledge that I didn't have. And I never would have encountered them had I not been, in the position to be around them.
Teaching is awesome.
The
I love that.
yeah, the last thing I'm gonna say is I posted this in the chat, but it's the give yourself a reputation to live up to thing. Like say that you're going to fulfill a role and do it, and do your best to live up to what you tell people you're gonna do, because that lights the fire under you and it makes you grow.
Yeah. Yeah, Rick, you wrote that in the chat, and I just like loved it. Give yourself a reputation to live up to. I not only love that just in general, but I love it in particular in this field and just for me. Because for me, game development and my life is an adventure, is a video game I'm living in real life. I have 7 things that I've committed to for my own New Year's resolutions. I'm curious if other people have their own. And the 7th one, labeled as most important of all, I commit to making my life a big, purple, sparkly adventure. It's ridiculous and silly, and it makes me excited. It is a reputation to live up to. I call myself a wizard because the kind of people who think that's stupid, I don't need in my life. And the kind of people who think that's hilarious and awesome are exactly who I want to be talking to. And it gives me something to strive for. I love it. We are definitely at the end of the episode. So, what I'd like to finish with, we've got Rick, Hamnet, and Carlos on stage. So, one at a time, I would love one coping mechanism from each of you, your favorite coping mechanism for the imposter syndrome. What is it that you do to get over imposter syndrome that you feel like others could use? We've heard a lot of this, but let's finish with one each. Let's just start. Why don't we get Rick, since you're unmuted?
It's changing the way that you reframe what the imposter syndrome is. It's understanding that the moment where you feel like you are doing something that is not who you are, that's you just recognizing that that's a point that you want to grow into. So don't treat it as an opportunity to make a fool of yourself. Treat it as an opportunity to grow yourself in the direction that you want to go. Because the only reason that you believe that you're going to be an imposter is because you have really high standards that you want to execute. So just force yourself to grow into living up to those standards.
I love that. Live up to your own standards, says Rick. What about you, Harmna?
I'm still going to stick with the third one because I feel like personally that one's worked for me every time. Accountability with kindness. It's one of the reasons I'm alive right now, so it
Yes.
works.
Give yourself accountability, expect yourself to grow, but be kind about how fast that happens. And Carlos, what about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and mimic that. I'm gonna rephrase it and call it, fighting feelings with evidence. Um,
Ooh,
you feel like you are, not where you should be or where you need to be, but every day, like Willem said, if you learned one thing of what you're looking into, that's progress, and that's the only thing we can really ask for.
love that. Hell yeah. Fighting feelings with evidence. That's also, I feel like, a really grounded, strong answer. I'm going to give you, here's my favorite. This guy, fireworks behind her. Amazing. I'm going to give you mine. Here's my coping technique. Just enjoy it. Have fun. You won't, at some point, you're going to stop having imposter syndrome in certain parts of your life. At some point, you're going to grow enough where certain other parts of your life are no longer scary. And then you will look back. I can tell you, I'm 10 years into my career now. You will look back and you'll remember that you used to be scared of certain things. And you'll kind of miss it. Because those feelings of fear are truly the final boss in the video game that makes it fun, that makes it exciting. So enjoy the imposter syndrome. Thank it. Welcome it. Be like, thank you for being here. Now I'm going to kick your ass, but thank you for being here. All right. That is the end of the episode. It has been such a fun episode. I always love our community episodes, and I hope you enjoyed listening. Thank you to Hamnet, Rick, and Carlos for getting on stage and being our impromptu community guests. Thank you, everybody, for asking your own questions. Thank you to John for bringing up the idea of imposter syndrome. For those who are listening, as always, we ask that you think of one person who needs to hear this and send it along to them for us. You, right now, person who is listening, we love you. We know you can do it. And also, please help us spread the word and send this along to somebody else in your life. All right, we'll be back here as always Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time in the Discord. There are links to join down below. We would love to have you in for the next episode. Ask your own questions live. And I think that's going to do it. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for coming.